on people's land, on neighbors' land, and the farms where everyone you just kind of go where you take your 22 and ride out on your bike and go. And he said there's all these programs now that are like meant to sort of like recreate that, but he said you're not going to recreate it. And if there's an upside to this, the upside to this is I think there's a lot more big bucks running around now as people like exercise more control over their stuff. And I don't know what good big bucks really are besides they look cool.
They represent something. They represent an ecosystem. Well, at least a species, a population that is in balance, in a natural state. If you looked at the deer herd in Michigan in 1970 or something like that, or 1980s, whenever you guys were hunting around, or whenever this was.
80s.
Okay. Yanni's giving me a look like. That was a very askew deer herd. Heavy on the does, very light on any type of mature bucks, just tons and tons of year-and-a-half-old bucks. That's not a natural herd of deer as it would be in, several hundred years ago when it wasn't as impacted by what we're doing. But now you are finding some places where you have a more natural herd, which is beneficial not just for hunters that like to see big bucks, but having a relatively balanced age structure. That's good for the whole herd.
In what way is that good for the herd?
So, for example, if you have more mature bucks and you have a balanced kind of structure of the different ages and things and the balance with the does, you're going to have a more tight rut. If you have a tight rut, if you have a well-timed rut that happens consistently in a small window, you're going to have a better fawn drop. You're going to have a tight fawn drop, a well-placed fawn drop that is conducive for the females and the fawns to be most healthy growing up the next year. So if you get, let me describe the opposite scenario. If you have a scenario where you've got lots and lots of does, not many mature bucks, just a bunch of year-and-a-half-old bucks, you're going to get does coming in to heat and bred at all different times of the year in the fall. So we're going to say a very spread out trickle rut. Does and getting bred in mid-October all the way to mid-December, scattered all around. So you've got fawns dropping in March, you got fawns dropping in, maybe not March, you got them dropping in late April, mid-May, early June. You want to have a tight drop. If you have fawns dropping all at the same time, less coyote predation. If you have them dropping at the right time, that's not too early, that they're freezing and not having nutrition available, but not so late that they're getting a late start on being able to...
They go into winter small.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of different things along those lines.
Can I lay a couple things in here real quick?
Yeah, I'm rambling.
No, you're not rambling at all. But I remember in that era, it was common to hear that you had buck to doe ratios of 20 or 30 does to every buck. And I remember when I learned that they were born basically 1-to-1 ratio, it's kind of shocking to see that level of harvest on the bucks. But there's a thing that, and I've talked about this before, I don't know if I talked about it here, but when we had largely kind of eliminated deer or really knocked deer back bad, even coming up into the 1930s, 1940s, there just weren't that many deer around. People became very it became culturally taboo to shoot does. I remember in this era we're talking about when I was a kid, there were a lot of old timers that would disparage someone who shot a doe. And because you wanted to get a deer, you just shot the bucks. And you shot every damn buck anyone ever laid eyes on got shot. And you'd wind up with these situations where you had, like I said, 20 to 30 does for every buck, and the bucks were most bucks were not living in to see their second December.
Even relatively recently, that was still the case in a lot of states. So, for example, in Michigan, and I'm going to get the numbers not quite right, but some number of years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, give or take, the percentage of the buck harvest in Michigan, if I remember right, someone's going to email you and say I'm wrong, but it's somewhere in this ballpark.
Yeah, they will.
Something like 70% of all the bucks, maybe more, of all the bucks killed in Michigan were year-and-a-half-olds. Now it has dropped down to, so it's significantly improved, but it's still one of the highest in the country. Something like 55% or 50-some% now, I think, is the number of the bucks killed in Michigan annually are a year and a half old. And that's still like the top 5 in the country. But now across the entire country, several years ago, for the first time, an age class different than year and a half olds is a higher percentage of the buck harvest than year and a half olds. So now,
Interesting. Oh shit, really?
Yeah, so now bucks over 3 comprise over 30% of the harvest if you look at across the country.
No way.
Hmm. And this has changed over the last 15 to 20 years. It's been dropping down.
So why don't guys that are big into whitetail management, why don't they let, I know the answer to this, but I'm just posing it. Why don't, if you want balanced age structure, why don't they let once they hit 4, why don't they become hands off? Why be like, oh, we want to make older bucks, but then systematically kill off every buck that gets to be that same threshold age? Why is there not a movement to, or like a management strategy, be like, to be like post trophy and say like, oh yeah, man, if he hits 4.5, what, 1 in 100 bucks or whatever it is will be 4.5. So as big as they're going to get, then we let those go because we're going to create 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. But instead, they get that big and people just get so lusty for them. They want them dead. So it makes it hard to argue that you're really trying to have these like age classes in place. It seems like you're just walking, what you're really trying to do is have big bucks because you want to shoot big bucks. And you're trying to like act like there's some biology or ecology or conservation at work when it's like, oh, how convenient.
I don't think anyone's going to argue the fact that anyone who is managing deer also wants to hunt deer. They want to take some deer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, so each person's going to set a different goal that is going to hopefully achieve something beneficial for the herd, but also they've got to have a goal as far as what they want to try to hunt and harvest. If you start saying that, I want to wait for 6 or 7 or 8 or 9-year-old bucks, you're simply never going to shoot any bucks then, because it's really, really hard to get bucks over 4, let alone over 5, even on big managed properties. It's just not an easy thing to do because even if you have a large property, these deer still go all over the place. So it's no guaranteed thing that if you pass on the 4-year-old, he's going to make to 5. Whether you're on a 100-acre property or a 1,000-acre property, that's not a guarantee.
So that just kind of winds up being about as old. Like there's so fewer 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds even.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone, even the folks that take management to the highest level, have great big properties, they can control a lot of acreage. I don't know anyone that really looks at targeting anything over 5. 5 is kind of like that. If it's over 5, it is fully mature. It's kind of reached the pinnacle as far as body size, antler size. It's expressed whatever genetic potential there it is. What he's going to be is what he's going to be. And that's a fully mature deer that's going to do everything that a mature deer is going to do. And if you can get them older than that, great, but that's hard to ask for. So 5-year-olds are what most people kind of set as that top end.